everybody, and welcome back to another episode of And Just Like That, We Found Therapy. I am your host, Isabel MV, and I am doing a solo episode today, which is my time to launch my pilot nickname to the fans of the show. I'm going to go with Boundary Babes, just because I think I can call you Bebes or BBs, and Queen BBs is quite cute. While I have you, today I am sporting actually a suit because I had to go into the city today to go to see my old world banks. But I kept the suit on for this episode because actually my mom bought this pantsuit in two sizes for her and I. And I kind of think we both used the larger one and the smaller one through different times. But I got to keep this one, and I always think of my mom because, in case you don't know, I lost my mom 9 years ago. So I'm very happy that she's with me here today for this episode because it's my first solo episode of season 3 that I intend to knock out of the park. So buckle up, Buttercup, because today we are here to discuss season 3, episode 3 of Sex and the City, Attack of the 5'10" Woman. And as your resident 5'10" woman, I'm actually 5'11", 6 feet on a good day. I thought this was a great episode to dive into solo, because this episode, it starts with all the girls going into brunch in New York on a Sunday, and it's very busy, and they're talking about how Sundays are the sports pages for women of the New York Times because you get the wedding announcements. And they're all kind of like making a mockery out of them until Charlotte sees the announcement of his wedding with Natasha, and Charlotte tries to conceal it, and poorly so. They end up seeing it. And basically, we get introduced to the theme of this episode, which is like, are there women who are out there with the sole purpose of making us feel shit about ourselves? So, because this is a solo episode, it's going to be a bit different to what you're used to in the other episodes. I'm going to focus on each one of the girls' storylines. And you guessed it, I'm going to spend extra time on Carrie because she's self-absorbed, so we get more details of her storyline, but because I think she kind of gets the brunt of this theme in this episode. By the way, if you are not watching on YouTube, you might be thinking, how do you want me to see your suit? So don't forget to follow me on social media at We Found Therapy Pod, because I post clips of the episodes there. But also just know that if you can't be bothered to do any of that, not YouTube, not socials, it's a black suit. It's just like I am emotionally attached to it. So let's dive in. Carrie. So after they all kind of talk about Mr. Big and Natasha getting married, we see Carrie going back to her house, and it's kind of painful to see that Charlotte is so concerned about the fact that she's going to go alone, that she chases her back home, and she's like, are you sure that you don't want me to stay? Like, are you sure that you don't want me to do this and do that? And Carrie's just like, I'm fine, okay? You can just leave. Like, I'm okay. I don't need you to be here. And Charlotte's just like, come on, I know you're gonna do it. You're just gonna like rip into this paper, and you are gonna fixate onto every single thing that says in this about Mr. Big and Natasha. And let's just get the band-aid ripped off together. Like, I'll sit with you. Let's do it. So this is actually such a sweet thing that Charlotte does for Carrie. And I was thinking about the pros and cons of this because I am, as you know, and if you don't know, I keep saying on this podcast that I'm very much like Carrie. I kind of like to schedule myself some like deep pity party moments in my life. And there's kind of like a good feeling about the fact that you know that, like, whatever, it's Friday evening, you have no plans, you just broke up with someone, and like you're gonna double down and you're gonna eat a bucket of ice cream and watch a sad movie and have a good cry, maybe have yourself half a full bottle of wine, and you're gonna give yourself that day to grieve. And that's kind of like what Carrie does. She fixes herself a drink, but she allows Charlotte to stay. And for this, I'm gonna play.
Wasn't gonna drink tonight, but I'm gonna have a double.
That's Kris Jenner, because I feel like Carrie was not gonna drink that day, but she had a double. They kind of have this moment where Charlotte finishes reading the announcement in the New York Times, and they try to make digs at some of the things that the announcement has, but at the end of the day, Carrie breaks down in tears and she's just like, ugh, it's not about him. It's just about this wedding and her. Like, she is Vera Wang and like high society pages on the New York Times, and I'm just the sex column that they rung next to the erectile dysfunction ads in, I think, is the New York Sun or something like that. I find it so beautiful that she allows herself to be vulnerable with Charlotte in this scene, and she names it, but like, comparison is indeed the thief of joy. And when you find yourself in a situation like this, where maybe you're no longer with someone that you're still pining for and they move on before you're going to want to have those moments of, okay, let's just like dive in and make sure we get in those hours of like being miserable. And I think there's two ways to look at it on whether or not you should do it alone. I think there's some beauty of doing this by yourself, which is the fact that you don't have to perform or control yourself for the sake of anybody's comfort or expectations of you, which I suffer from. Like, if somebody, especially in my house, because I was raised to try and be the best hostess that I can. So I want you to feel comfortable and welcome. And like, are you thirsty? Are you hungry? Do you need anything? So for me, I personally think that at this stage of my life, I'm not capable of having the meltdown that I need to have around anybody in my own house. So when you're doing this by yourself, and because I live alone, I work for myself, I have this podcast that is my own, even though I do it with many guests, I have the luxury, but also the curse of being able to live in a vacuum, which when you schedule yourself some mystery time like Carrie wanted to do in this episode, I think it's important to maybe contain that time or that mystery. Give yourself the day, give yourself the time, give yourself a certain amount of drinks, and like Kris Jenner, like a double, but no more. And maybe put an end to the spiral. Because my problem is my bad moods can be sticky. And sometimes all it takes is a good night's sleep. But sometimes you don't get that good night's sleep and you kind of went to bed feeling like shit, and you wake up the next morning with a hangover of still feeling like shit. And this is also a reminder to myself to make sure that I check in if I need to. So I personally struggle a lot showing my vulnerable side, even to my friends, which sucks. But just because I feel like sometimes I feel tremendously let down if somebody isn't available or shows up the way that I need them to be when I'm feeling at my worst. And if you have read my Substacks, you know that I've been there not that long ago, but I just couldn't bear another disappointment. So I've kind of like come on the other side of it, because sometimes all I need if I want to cut a spiral is not somebody to save me, but is somebody to distract me and give me some levity in my heaviness, which, sometimes I will call my best friend in Madrid who's obsessed about Taylor Swift, and like I'll tell her like, okay, tell me whatever it is that Taylor Swift did, or like, what have you been up to? And it's just something that makes me get my head out of my ass, laugh about something, and remind me that, like Carrie, maybe needed to remind herself, I'm not the center of the world. I have reasons to be happy about, and I have reasons to laugh for. And then on the other side of it, if I had allowed for somebody to come into my space and be like, okay, fine, let's throw a pity party of what today is, which is like a horrible, horrible day. The allegedly love of my life got married to a 20-year-old. I would make sure that if I'm comfortable enough for you to come into my house, to be there for me, I should also be comfortable enough to say, like, I'm so sorry, this has been lovely, but like, do you mind if you leave now? Because I want to be by myself. So just keep those two things in mind. I think if you're going to do it solo, make sure that you have a rescue plan of how to take yourself out of that spiral. And if you do allow for that somebody to come into your space, because sometimes I've welcomed that kind of quote unquote invasion, make sure that you also know how to gracefully exit. But besides this, after that happens, Carrie is shopping with Miranda, and I don't know what they were talking about, but then Natasha comes out of like the dressing room next to them, and she is looking gorgeous and young, and Carrie's wearing like granny panties and her bra, and she's half naked. They have this encounter where Natasha looks generally curious and graceful around running into somebody that she knows is important to her husband. And they talk about this Women in the Arts luncheon, which Carrie says, oh, I go to that every year because, I write. So I'm a woman in the arts, which is a lie. And here we go into another thing that I think obviously speaks to the insecurities of Carrie, because Carrie not only throws herself into this luncheon that she had no intention of attending, but she also forces herself into overspending a lot of money into making sure that she looks tall enough, pretty enough, expensive enough. And the things that I want to touch upon this is the spending that Carrie does for this event. It's kind of like a ticket that is meant to, one, proactively fix past shame, two, neutralize the feeling of feeling less than, and three, which I think is the most important one to her, proving that she belongs in the same social category as Natasha. And I think I'm guilty of this. Sometimes I feel like an outfit will buy me the ticket into feeling good enough, feeling refined enough, elegant enough, worthy enough to be in certain rooms. And I think that if you find yourself maybe sometimes doing this kind of spending, this kind of commitment to going to things that maybe you wouldn't normally go to, there is a difference between getting dressed to express yourself, which I do, and to repair a wound. And I'm sure that, like me, Carrie would have been like, cool, maybe I'm buying this dress and this shoes because Natasha will be there, but I love it and I'll use it in all these many other things. And like, it's an investment for my wardrobe, because I do tell myself that. And like, that's part of the reason why part of my wardrobe lives in my studio slash office, which would look a lot nicer if I didn't have all my gowns and some coats in here. But the way to spot the difference between a repair wound outfit and I'm expressing myself outfit is to maybe evaluate, do you feel like there's urgency to you buying this outfit? Do you feel like you have budget amnesia because you really need this exact outfit? Do you kind of like have this fantasy of being seen correctly with this outfit? As I said, like having this dress on will make people see me for the refined, self-respected, and respectful woman that I aspire to be, and not the sex column girl that I think they see me as. And lastly, do you picture somebody else's reaction when they see you in that dress? Which, like, take that with a grain of salt, because if you're excited about a purchase, I think, I'm sorry, we all do that. But if you sleep on it and you think about it the following day and you still want the outfit, reassess again. Like, always sleep on it, screenshot it, 48 hours, and then if you want, pull the trigger. Also, not to leave behind, like, the to go or not to go to this event. I think before Carrie dragged, well, actually, Samantha offered herself to go with her, but before they got all unraveled into like shelling out 2K between shoes and dress, probably having spent $80 for her drink ticket, etc. Ask yourself this question: are you going there to connect, or are you going there to compare? And I think the minute that Carrie gets there and she gets told that Natasha's not going, she kind of goes into this like, I'm mad, pouty, childish behavior with every other woman in that room, which is so sad. Like, these are women that are probably super respected, that you should look up to. I've just listened to the episode of Call Her Daddy with Michelle Obama because I'm recording this at the end of January. And there's something to be said about learning from older women. How entitled are you that because Natasha's not there to be impressed by your outfit, you feel like you have nothing to gain from the experience? So know that. But on the other end, if you decide that you do not want to go, it doesn't mean that you're avoiding it. There is something to be said about showing up for yourself and not self abandoning. Like, if by going, you are going to spend all this money because you feel like you need to prove this woman something, I think it's fair to say you're not ready to face this. You would be self abandoning your bank account to show somebody else. And I'm sorry, I actually really like Natasha. I don't think Natasha cares about any of that. And I think probably Natasha is very jealous of some of the creative, more bohemian aspects of Carrie. But to my point, if you feel like you're not ready to face that, don't go. And like, that means that you have your own back. And the final note on Carrie's storyline comes when she's at home and she receives a thank you note from Natasha saying, like, thank you for coming to the Women in the Arts luncheon. And I'm sorry I couldn't be there. And she does a typo and spells there Their instead of There. And Carrie immediately gets the phone, calls Miranda, and she's like, thank God this woman got married because she's an idiot. And I have to say, there's two things in this little scene. One, I think Carrie thinks femininity only counts if it comes with the right etiquette. And that is very reductive. And two, the typo doesn't make Natasha an idiot, the same way that the thank you note doesn't make Natasha superior. It just reveals how desperate we all are in moments of insecurity to put other women into categories to make ourselves feel better. And I mean, I don't know. I feel like I've always been such a girl's girl. I have unfortunately have to face some of my exes be with other women, and obviously it stings, but I think it stings even more when I don't know the woman, because then when I meet the woman, it's always gone kind of two ways. One, I really really like her in a way that I'm like, one, I get it, and two, like, fine, I like her so much. If I really love him, I should be so happy that we're together. And like, I don't know, there's something about the complexity of a woman that I wouldn't want to mess with that. Or the other bit, which is when I meet them and I'm like, oh my God, like, what a train wreck. And then I kind of just like feel sorry, but also I'm like, okay, if that's your type, then I'm not it. But also, you kind of fall off a pedestal. Like, I truly believe in sisterhood. And this to me kind of ties in with Charlotte's storyline for this episode, because nobody will understand the struggles that we go through as women, as other women. And I do think that there is a special place in hell for women that don't support other women.
That's my opinion!
And that's my opinion. Okay, now on to Charlotte's storyline. Now, this is a very relatable storyline. Charlotte is a great friend to Carrie in this episode when she kind of like imposes herself around her, and Carrie's very vulnerable around Charlotte, but also Charlotte is so sweet towards her. And then all the girls go to the Elena Rubinstein spa in New York, and they go to the sauna, and all the women are naked, and Charlotte gets super flustered around the fact that she doesn't feel confident enough to be naked in front of other women. Which, as I just said, no one else will have the amount of empathy towards that as other women. We all have our hang-ups on like certain parts of our bodies. Like, yes, I'm very tall, but like I'm still waiting for my boobs to grow. I remember waiting so patiently, and I was one of the last girls in my class to get my period. So I was like, okay, there's still hope because I still didn't get my period. My boobs may yet kick in. Guess what? They never kicked in. And like, yeah, some women will say like, oh my god, of course you look great because you're so tall, everything that yeah, but like I have no boobs, and let me tell you, when I bloat, I kind of look like just one big thing because like I have not no boobs, and my stomach's just out there, so it's just like one big block. But I've kind of like learned how to embrace it, and also I've always been obsessed with models, and not that many models have big boobs, so find your own poison that makes yourself feel better about yourself and like drink it. But Charlotte's specific thing is that she hates her thighs. And she is also commenting with Carrie, being like, I'm not used to being naked. And look at her. She obviously grew up in a naked household. I didn't grow up in a naked household. And Carrie turns around and she's like, I think she still thinks she lives in a naked household. I call bullshit. Like, if you went to school and played sports, you've been around naked women. And I think that's one of the healthiest things. I don't think my girlfriends in school ever bullied me around anything in my body. But you obviously compare, and especially in that awkward stage where you are growing into a different body, it can be alarming to compare your body to your girlfriend's and be like, why do you have hair there? And like, why are your boobs suddenly looking so round and plump and mine aren't? And like, that is so jarring. But I don't know. I feel like once you get over that, once you've been used to like being naked with other women, and I think that's a way to be vulnerable, I kind of think that that is kind of like the first step. The second step, because you cannot control, like, I think that's a very non-sexual setting, even if you're gay, because I think, the energy of a changing room is very different when it's all women. But the other thing is, if there's really something that you're not happy about with your body, which, we're women, there's always, unfortunately, something. I personally have always struggled with, yes, I'm tall, but like because I have no boobs, I always felt like my stomach had to be almost like inward, and I had never had a flat stomach. And then I build a plan, and I'm like, okay, let me get into sports. And I think I started by being a Barry's bootcamp junkie. And now I've become kind of like a gym junkie. Like, I cannot go to classes anymore. I just do my own thing. I run, I weightlift, I do yoga, but all in my own time and in my own terms. And I love my gym. And do I have a perfect body? No. I'm also, I'm older. Things are not as perky and as high up as they used to be, but I'm strong and I've made so much progress. And in case you haven't read my Substacks, I had a big, big accident skiing and I had to get surgery and I had to recover from that. I was off my feet for 2 months and then some, like I couldn't walk. So I'm tremendously grateful and proud of my body. So my body is no longer reduced to something that is meant to be approved by the male gaze. Sorry for those of you watching on YouTube. I keep looking out the window because my garden has become this zoo. And there is a mix of birds, squirrels, a cat, and sometimes foxes. And there is a very feral cat that has killed 2 pigeons in the past 2 weeks. And I think he's like roaming around. Rabbit, my dog, is here, but she's too precious to one face that feral cat, and two, to get out in this cold weather of January. But as I was saying, I personally have built my relationship with my body around the fact that I respect its boundaries, and I had to learn to. And I have built a very strong body that I want to have a lot of longevity in the mobility and strength of it. So it's no longer, the purpose is no longer, every time that I talk to my trainer, I say, like, I want to look like a model, but I also want to be able to survive a zombie apocalypse. Because it's taken me, I think, more than a year to get back to where I was in running before my accident. And that kind of makes you have a different relationship with your body. Like, for starters, I always say, like, I'm doing everything that I could be doing to be as fit as I could be. So I have no qualms and I have no objections or shit to bring to my body. Like, we're doing fine. And I want to wrap it up nicely in like a podcasty, Instagrammy way. Peace with your body doesn't come from convincing yourself that your body is perfect. It's about deciding that your life is too big, too full, too interesting, too meaningful to be reduced to a single body part. And that's what I'll say about that. But I do think that women's relationship with food and exercise is complicated. So if you find yourself having toxic control rituals or vigilance around some of these things that you can do to have a plan to fix the parts of yourself that you're not so happy with, reach out to someone. Feel free to DM me. I honestly, I have done so much work inside of my therapist's office and inside the gym and everywhere else to work around this, because I think as women it's super, super hard to not develop or inherit toxic relationships around food and exercise. And that's it for Charlotte. Then for Miranda, we get introduced to Magda, who I love because she's so sweet. But basically, Miranda's too busy. She, I think, is on track to make partner or a partner already at her law firm. And she gets a cleaning lady. And that's Magda. And Magda is Polish and she's super traditional. And she's just trying to put the Magda filter on Miranda's life and Miranda's house. And, a woman shouldn't drink that much coffee. She should drink more herbal tea. And a woman should have a rolling pin in her kitchen to make pies. Women should make pies. And at one point, Magda stumbles upon Miranda's goodie drawer and she sees that Miranda has a vibrator and lube and condoms, and she gets super startled. And Miranda goes into explanation mode, which is, listen, I have a boyfriend now, so I'm very happy, but like I didn't have a boyfriend for a long time, and that's why I have the other guy there. And then Magda kind of oversteps a bit and she says, But you want to get married, no? No man will marry you if you have that in your bedside table because it shows that you don't need a man. And here I think that Miranda handled it okay-ish because at one point she does go into that explanation mode that she didn't have to. But at some point, I think Steve is busy. So Miranda's ready to have herself like a good night by herself with her vibrator. And she sees that Magda has left the Virgin Mary, and that would have freaked the fuck out of me. The next day goes onto the kitchen and she's just had it. She's like, Magda, where's that thing that used to be in my bedside drawer? And who is this? And Magda's like, that's Virgin Mary. And she's like, and where's my thing? And Magda's like, what thing? And Ren's like, don't make me say it. Girl, if that woman has moved your vibrator, which for all we know, maybe you haven't cleaned and she didn't have gloves, you can say to her, my vibrator. But she doesn't say it, and she's like, "Oh, I left it next to her dryer in the middle drawer of bathroom," which is like, "Girl, Magda, like, why? What makes you think that right after you dry your hair, you're in the mood for that? Like, girl, no." But anyway, Miranda sets her foot down, and the next day she finds that Magda has arranged her condoms by color and like kind of like in a little spiral on a plate instead of the herbal teas. And that's it. She finds her comfort because she says, like, I don't need you to bless me. I don't need God to bless me. And I don't need you to be my mother. Because my mother lives in Philadelphia, which is too close. And like, that's the end of that. Lastly, Samantha's storyline, which is that the women who are meant to make her feel bad about herself are the other women of Elena Rubinstein that go to Kevin, this masseur that apparently specializes into giving this women a happy ending. And Samantha schedules a massage with him. And when she doesn't get her happy ending, she goes for it. And then he makes a complaint and he gets fired because she says, like, I only did it because I heard that she got eaten out by Kevin. And then these women are at the luncheon and they attack Samantha. But I want to leave you with something from another pop culture reference that I found extremely informative and teaching, which is Mean Girls, which is when Katie Heron has this moment in the Math Olympics or whatever it is. She's like, just because I call this girl ugly, it wouldn't make me pretty. Just because I called her dumb, it wouldn't make me smarter. And just because I made fun of her shoes, it wouldn't make me win this competition. The limit does not exist. So just think about that. And if one of those women that makes you feel worse about yourself is a friend of yours, first pause, think how much of that could be in your head and like how much of what they are allegedly pointing out is in your head. Because if you're a good person, chances are you have really good friends and they're not doing it to spite you or to hurt you. So it just means you have some more work to do. So my advice to the girls for this episode would be, Carrie, go to therapy and be a better friend. And like maybe get a hobby. I have been in a state after some breakups where I was like in shock. Like I just saw a very bad car crash for like days. And I signed myself up to do some volunteering at daycare centers and a museum close to me because it really does make you snap out of things. And like, it's a good distraction. Like every time that I thought about him or I thought about calling him or texting him, I would like go and offer an idea. Like, what if we do? And like, and let me tell you, nobody ever picked up any of my ideas, but like it worked. For Charlotte, I would say I think she did well by going back to the sauna and making sure that she was comfortable enough to take her towel off and just sit there with her alleged big thighs, because that is the right amount of exposure therapy. None of her friends are there because I think Charlotte had also this feeling of like, because I had this conversation with Carrie, I need to show Carrie that I'm over it. She did it by herself, and then she got this compliment by this other woman who said to her, I would kill for your breast. And that would probably be me. But yeah, I think that amount of exposure therapy is perfect because, as I said, that is not a sexual scenario. It's not a sexual setting. You're just with other women who know how deep the struggle is. And that is kind of baby steps to walking the line of embracing your body. And I'm going to throw another pop culture reference to you. Julia Roberts in Eat, Pray, Love, when she kind of talks about the fact that when you get naked in front of a man, that's it. They've won. You're naked in front of a man. They don't care whether your thighs are not the perfect size. They feel the luckiest men alive because they have a naked woman in front of them. For Miranda, I would just advise her to watch out, to maybe set those boundaries with a bit more kindness from the beginning and not go in over explaining mode. Because the problem with Miranda is like sometimes she just flips between being a people pleaser that wants Magda to like her and not judge her to being kind of rude. So I would just have called the vibrator a vibrator and be like, listen, I really appreciate you wanting to have my back, but like, I know what I need, and it'd be great if you facilitated that around the house. So please, let's steer away from like going into my goodie drawer. And I am sorry, but I don't like to make pies. So thank you very much for the rolling pin, but I don't need it. And lastly, for Samantha, I would say never touch anybody's privates, especially if you are in a professional setting where that is their job, without consent, girl. But I think, we know that. I know you guys are better than that. My boundary babes. I don't know how that sounds yet. But last but not least, I hope you guys do follow me on socials at We Found Therapy Pod. In case you don't, I announced the season 3 of this podcast 3-4 weeks ago. And in that, I pointed out that this season is all about you. So I want to hear all the questions that you guys have, whether it's about dating, love, friendship, self-esteem, self-love. I am so excited to dive into those questions and partner up with some of the people that I've had on the show, some people that haven't come on the show, but like they have golden advice, and get you the advice that you need. And until then, thank you so much for listening. I'm tremendously grateful for anybody who is out there listening to this. And I love y'all. I'll see you on our next therapy session. Bye. Thank you for tuning in to another episode of And Just Like That, We Found Therapy. If you loved it, follow the podcast, leave a 5-star review, and send this episode to someone who needs it. That is how we grow. And don't forget our new segment this season, He's Not Your Mr. Big. Send me your love dilemmas over on Instagram at We Found Therapy Pod, and I'll answer them with one of our in-house experts. See you at our next therapy session. I love y'all. Bye.